Hi everybody, welcome back to Bentley House. I'm Aira, and today we are continuing to work on the abandoned coffee shop. Throughout the entire process, I have had several people tell me that I need to add some wildlife to the coffee shop, and so today I'm going to be working on an extremely tiny bird's nest. Now I have looked to see if there are other videos on how to make a bird's nest, and there are, but they're usually about the size of a bottle cap or larger. And so I wanted to make something really tiny and delicate to put in the wall of the coffee shop. Now I do plan to make this a fall scene, so I made eggs to go with it, but I probably won't be putting them into my final project unless I can find a specific egg of a bird that lays eggs in fall so that I can be seasonally correct. So I hope you guys will enjoy this tutorial, and I realized watching the footage back that my nails were just as distressed as my project, so sorry about that. I'm gonna try and get those fixed up for the next video, but I hope you enjoy it, and let's get started. To start out, you're going to need some tacky glue, and you're going to want to pour it into a little container so that you can stick your finger into it. You're also going to need some embroidery thread in the color brown, or you could do a tan if you wanted to. A Sharpie, it doesn't matter what color it is. Some clay to create the eggs, and then some kind of plastic surface that will help things not stick to your mat, I guess. So the first thing we're going to do is take the embroidery thread and then unravel it. And this is not the highest quality embroidery thread. You can probably get even thinner strands if you get the really nice quality stuff. But I'm just going to dip my finger into the tacky glue and then cover the entire strand in glue. This is going to make it straighten out and then get stiff once it dries. This is what you need the little plastic surface for. This is just a like a gallon bag that I'm reusing, and you just want to stick it down in a straight line. I'm going to make 4 of these strands, and they're about 6 inches long each. Now to make the eggs, I'm going to combine some blue and a lot of white to make this very light blue color. And then I'm just going to roll it into balls that are about the size that I want the eggs to be. Because this nest is going to be pretty small, I need the eggs to be even smaller, obviously. And then once I have them rolled into the little balls, I just kind of squish one side down a little bit more to give it the egg shape, and then bake those according to package instructions. Once the strings are dry, I am just going to kind of break them. It doesn't really break the string, it just kind of breaks the glue, and then it starts to look like sticks. So they have that angled look to them. Then I'm going to take the end of my Sharpie and then once again stick my finger into the tacky glue and cover the end of the Sharpie with glue. This is going to be the form that I start making the nest around. Then I'm going to take my string and wrap it around the area that has the glue on it. And this is why we broke the string previously, because it's going to look like this is sticks and not just a straight bit of string. It has more of the angle and the natural look that you would get from a bird's nest where they use sticks to create it. So I'm going to do this one string at a time, and each time I'm adding a string, I'm just going to brush a little bit more glue onto the previous layer. I'm going to let the sides dry really good, and once I feel like that's dried, I'm going to add some extra glue to the very bottom of the Sharpie and then start coiling another piece of string to create the bottom of the nest. This takes a little bit of patience and more patience to get this to work for you. And I'm just going to wrap it around until I have the entire bottom of the nest covered. And if I have any extra, I'm just going to let that dry. And then once that's dry, I'm going to add a little bit more glue to the extra part and wrap it around to become more of the nest on the outside. And I'm just kind of eyeballing this to be how I like it. You can change it up, you can make it deeper, you can make it more shallow, you can make it thicker by adding more string. It's really up to what you want. Then I'm going to let it dry for at least an hour, And once it looks dry, you can't see any more glue, pop it off the end of the Sharpie. You may see a little bit of glue sticking up on the edges. You can just clip that off with scissors, or you can push that glue back down into the nest. Now it does look a little bit shiny, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some matte brown paint and I'm going to paint over any place that you can see the glue. Make sure that it's matte paint and not shiny paint. We're going to put some other material inside the nest, but I want to make sure it does not look shiny inside, because I don't think there'd be anything shiny inside of a used bird's nest. I'm also going to be brushing on a little bit of that interior paint onto the outside of the nest, and I'm also going to dry brush a little bit of black. Because this is going to be in my abandoned coffee shop, it's going to be an old nest that's been used, so it's probably going to be a bit grimy. Now I'm going to grab some Q-tips, and what I want is the cotton that's on the end of the Q-tips. And I'm just going to start pulling at it with some tweezers because I want very thin, wispy pieces of cotton. And I'm going to start incorporating that into the nest. Nests made by birds. I'm not a really knowledgeable bird person, but I do know birds use everything from sticks and hair and pieces of linen and cotton and stuffing, and especially since we have a chair in the abandoned coffee shop that has stuffing kind of spilling out of it, I feel like this bird's nest would have some kind of fiber material just built into the nest. So I just added some glue into a crevice on the outside of the nest to add a little bit of the cotton, and I also want to add some on the inside. Typically that would be where the eggs and the baby birds were, so I would think it would be a softer part of the nest. I'm just guessing. I'm sure there's some bird experts out there somewhere who can correct me, but for now I'm just kind of going with the flow. I did look up a few pictures on the internet to get an idea of what I wanted to make. I'm not going after a certain species or anything. Now I'm taking some leftover pieces of the glued string and I'm just cutting little bits, and I want to add to the natural look of it to have a few sticks sticking up out of the nest. Also, when I install it in my project, I'm going to want to add a few more sticks, so don't get rid of those pieces yet. Because this is supposed to be a used and old nest, I want to add some watered down brown paint just to let that soak into the cotton to make it look a little bit more old. And of course, you know, birds aren't the cleanest animals, so it wouldn't look super nice in there. And once the eggs were baked, I used a really tiny black pen nib to add just some speckles onto the outside of the eggs. Now, some people may have seen on my Instagram where I made a Felix the Cat and I put him in the coffee shop, and some people suggested to make an old Felix the Cat clock. If you want to see how I made a brand new looking one, I will link that in the iCard above. But this is my old abandoned Felix the Cat, and the only difference between the way I made him and the other one is he only has one eye. I still did the regular finish, but I will show you how I age him into my project. Now, in the abandoned coffee shop, there's not a lot of good wall hanging space, so I'm adding in an extra wall piece. You can kind of see what it looked like before I aged it. It has some cardboard on the back, and then I put the scrapbook paper that matches the other wallpaper onto the front, and then I glued that in with tacky glue, allowing it to dry. And then I'm just going to add Felix onto the front of it. And I forgot to mention, I made his dials pointing down, kind of like the springs had let loose and the dials were just giving in to gravity. Now, once the cat clock is in, I know that I want the nest right there on top of his head, so I'm darkening the areas around it because that would have been a place with moisture coming from the bird's nest, and so it probably would have seeped into the building. And then I'm also going to grunge up the wallpaper like I had previously done in my wallpaper tutorial, my old grungy wallpaper tutorial, and I'll link that in the iCard too if you want to check back on how I did that. Now my go-to for making things look really old and gross is to use black paint, but when your item is already black, that doesn't really do a lot. So here I'm using watered down light tan paint, and this is going to really show up on the cat clock instead of trying to use black. And I really like the effect that it gives. So that's just a tip if you're trying to age something that's already really dark. So now I'm going to be putting in the bird's nest. I'm putting it right on top of the cat's head, which I think is really funny because it's a bird on a cat's head. Anyway, I thought it was funny. And I'm going to be adding in some more of those sticks like I mentioned to give it more of a natural look. So I'm adding some at the top between the nest and the wall, and then I also added a few between the cat's forehead and the nest. I'm also going to be adding some more cotton in there. If my hand would move out of the way, you could see it in the same areas. And this is going to continue to grow that really lived in, nature created nest look. And then again, also age that cotton with a little bit of watered down paint. So the truth about having birds in your project is they make a mess. And so I had to add in some white paint here, and you may think that I overdid it and it's pretty gross looking, but that's the nature of birds. And if you really want to go for realism, you got to include a little poo. Is that something that I should quote? Ara Bentley, 2019. You got to include a little poo. So I added some bird residue to the project. I included it on the countertops. I didn't put it on the toaster because I'm not quite sure exactly where the toaster is going yet. Oh, and I also put a little cotton in the eye hole where Felix is missing an eye. I figured maybe the bird would have stuffed a few extra supplies in there or something. So that's my finished look for my Felix clock and my little nest. If you're a bird expert out there and you have any suggestions for the type of eggs I could put in there to coincide with fall, leave me a comment. And also, if you have any other nature suggestions for other things I could hide into the abandoned coffee shop, also leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. I really hope you guys aren't too grossed out by today's edition. It's nature, right? It's natural. It's naturally nature. So that's it for today. I hope you guys really enjoyed this project. If you make a nest and put it into one of your projects, please tag me on Instagram at Bentley House Minis. I always love to see what you guys create. I'm going to add one more reminder to the end of this video. We are still doing dollhouses for kids battling cancer. The last day I'm going to be collecting donations for the charity is on, hold on. I gotta look for the date. On March 11th. So if you were wanting to send something in, make sure to get it in as soon as possible. But keep in mind that all donations made through the internet links can be made at any time. I will leave a link to that video in the description box below if you have no idea what I'm talking about, so that you can check it out and see if that's something that you want to donate to. I hope you guys have an amazing week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!